When the student is ready, the teacher will appear. When the student is truly ready, the teacher will disappear. Lao Tzu.
Hi, I'm Melinda Vanfleet, and welcome to the Good Karma Success Coach podcast. I'm a success coach, speaker, and business consultant, and my husband Ryan and I were laid off at the same time 10 years ago. We moved to the Florida Keys without jobs, not knowing anyone, hardly any money, and we'd never even been here. But we made it, and now we're living our best lives. And all along on our journey, I've said that someday when we get our quote-unquote shit together, we will help others. And since then, we've both done a lot of self-work and built successful businesses. So that day is here, and one of my ways of paying it forward is through this podcast. Each week, my intent is to be relatable and bring you tactical tips, tools, share my learnings and stories that can help inspire or transform you wherever you are in your career or general life and make an impact. I strongly believe that if I can do it, you can do it too. So what's stopping you?
Hi, everyone. Welcome, and thank you in advance for listening to this podcast. I'm super excited to share what I have to share today. I want to kick off by talking about the quote in the beginning of the podcast. It's pretty amazing. You always hear, or at least I have always heard, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. But I've never heard the second part of that quote. And that second part is really important too, and something that you may have experienced in your life or will be experiencing someday, that when you're ready with certain content, you don't need it anymore. So it's kind of like that teacher disappears. And I know I definitely have gone through that many times, different coaching programs and different podcasts and authors, you name it, mentors. And that's just an important part of life in your journey as well. So I thought that was really fascinating when I was looking up this quote, that there's part 2 of that quote. And I had never heard that before, because most people don't talk about that, because most coaches want you to stay with them forever. I definitely had that experience last year with a certain coaching program that I didn't really need anymore, and kind of ended on an ugly note. So I talk about that a little bit in some past podcasts. But when I started digging into the quote, I really learned some fascinating information that I'm going to share with you. So that quote, which is by Lao Tzu, and it's from a text, a Chinese text, that was actually before Buddhism. So some people might say that that quote is a Buddhist quote. It's really not. It's a Chinese quote that is in the Tao Te Ching. And that text, that Chinese text, is from 6th century BC. And some have said that that text influenced Buddhism, which is then from the 500s BC from India. So very interesting. So that quote is Taoism. And then I started digging a little further and kind of going down this rabbit hole, but it was all really fascinating. If you listen to Wayne Dyer, he talks about Taoism. So I was like, is Taoism and Taoism the same thing? What does that mean? And basically, yes, they are. Taoism is the English word. And so some of you, again, may be familiar with Taoism from Wayne Dyer, because he talks about Taoism a lot. And if you're not familiar with Wayne Dyer, definitely check him out. So he passed on, but his words, his teachings, his books, his Audible, just amazing. I have the chills here thinking about it. So he was definitely, and his story of how he got started, I always thought was amazing as well. I mean, he wrote a book and he traveled in his car with copies of the book, selling them, bookstore to bookstore, cold calling stores, selling his book. And that's how he got his start. So if you follow me and you know anything about my husband and I, you'll definitely understand why I really appreciate Wayne Dyer, because of how he got started. Nothing was handed to him. He worked hard for it. He created his own philosophies and worked really hard. So I also want to read to you about Buddhism and Taoism. because you still may be going, well, what's the difference? Like, what does that mean? I always thought that quotes like that were Buddhist. And so I'm going to read this. Buddhism and Taoism are both very peaceful religions and use meditation for peace of mind and enlightenment. Both religions focus on a goal of self-improvement. Buddhists believe in reincarnation, which is the belief in cycle life after death. Taoists believe in the here and now more than what happens after death. And then further, Taoist thought focuses on genuineness, longevity, health, immortality, vitality, detachment, refinement, spontaneity, transformation, and omnipotential. So very cool things. I will put this all in the show notes just because it's really just a little bit of enlightenment for you. And especially if you're ready, like the quote says, you might really benefit from this information, just a little bit of clarity. And like I said, some things I didn't know. I just assumed that a lot of these quotes were Buddhist quotes. That's kind of what you hear out there. And people don't really often take a few extra minutes to Google and find out what some of the meaning is behind it. And it's all out there. It's all out there on Google. You can spend 5 minutes Googling and you will learn a lot. So what brought me down this rabbit hole initially is, if you've been following me, and if you haven't, you can easily scroll through my podcasts and see that I am a huge believer and action taker in regards to learning about different tools that there are out there. Different tools that might be more spiritual in nature, that can really help you live your best life, that can help you gain clarity around why you may act or behave in a certain way, clarity around your feelings and emotions. It's just a huge help to have that clarity. And words can't express this enough. Like, they just really can't. So I'm been fascinated since I was a child about a lot of these different practices. Probably tarot cards was my first, and I have so many amazing tarot card stories of readings and advice that was given to me that was spot on. And I took action, and I'm so glad I did. And someday I'll probably share this really incredible story that was probably one of the most life-changing stories for me that happened prior to being with my husband, but led me down the path to end up with my husband. But it's just an amazing story, and not that many people know it. My friends know it probably from way back when. I doubt they remember it though, because it was a very long time ago, but I'll never forget it. And one of the reasons why I really love tarot cards is because I'm claircognizant, which means that I have an innate knowing. The clairs are considered to be like psychic, your psychic powers, and we all have them. We're just not aware of them. We probably don't practice them. It might be too much for someone to handle in this human lifetime in terms of grasping and understanding. But we all have them. It's that intuition. It's that, oh my God, I can't believe they just called me and I was just thinking about them. Or, oh, I knew that was going to happen. It's all of that stuff. That is your clairs. You're either clairvoyant, clairaudient, claircognizant, or clairsentient. So Ryan's clairsentient. He gets like feelings in his body. He gets like gut nudges. He can always kind of tell if someone's going to be a bad client or not. But mine is more of knowing. And I've always felt that I was someone who just knew things. And I couldn't really put my arms around it. And as I got older, I became stronger in it, especially in my 30s, I would say. In my 30s, I started to go, okay, I know this. Like, I know this about this person and I need to walk away. I know this about this situation or this job and I need to either walk away or accept it. All those things, the more you practice, it's a muscle. So the more you practice, the more you get better at it, and the more you start to trust yourself and know that that's guidance from divine versus your ego. So that is like a huge part of it too. And that's just, practicing and having examples and things happen to you and you start to remember them and recognize them and appreciate them. And, part of it's getting older too. So like I said, in my 30s is when I started to really recognize what was going on. But probably in my 40s did I really start to really go, okay, I'm trusting my gut on this. I need to walk away from this person. This person is not going to change. This person doesn't serve me. They're sucking my energy and nothing's ever going to get better. I can't change them. I need to walk away. And that's like just a huge piece of it. I could probably talk about that forever and ever and ever. But just knowing your clairs is a really cool thing to know and work on and develop. So I'm going to recommend some different tools in this podcast. So this is the first one I'm going to recommend. And this is a book if you're interested in figuring out what clair you are, or if you think you know and you want to learn more, and you can have more than one clair. That's totally common too. I would probably say that, I don't know, maybe my second one is either clairsentience or clairvoyance. I'm not really sure, but obviously my dominant one is the one I'm really focusing on, making sure that I recognize and appreciate and continue to practice. But this book is fantastic. It's called Four Psychic Clair Senses, and it's by Kevin Hunter. So it is amazing. It dives into all four clair senses, and then it even talks about two others, which is smell and taste, because some people might have that as well. But primarily there's four. So even if you don't want to get overwhelmed, just kind of focus on those. But I highly recommend that book. So if you're looking to learn more and develop more of your own intuition, especially now with COVID, we've all been forced into these different situations, different work situations, different situations as to how we're treated. And I talk a lot about that from a work perspective and a business perspective on the Crush It in Sales podcast, my other podcast. And also relationships. How are things going in your home? There's been more and more divorce, unfortunately. There's been even worse situations that besides divorce, where people are really struggling within their home, and that might result in violence or mental abuse. So I really, I'm putting this out there as a tool, and I'm just going to keep reverting back to the quote, "When the student is ready, the teacher will appear," the first part of the quote. But if you don't need that and you're already really good with your clair, then obviously you don't need this book. Or maybe you just might have it as a tool to give someone else. So that is my first tool that I want to talk about today. And to circle back on the tarot card statement, when you feel that you know things, which is claircognizant, the tarot cards help confirm those knowings. And that's why I love tarot cards. And my second tool is kind of an interesting story. And that tool is crystals. So 2 years ago, I stumbled into Sherry Broden's shop. And Sherry Broden has been on my podcast before early on. Oh, it might be like episode 4. And it's a really scratchy, really bad recording because we did it with her using her phone because she didn't have a computer that she could use, and we had decided to just do it over the phone. But anyhow, the content is amazing, and she's an amazing hypnotherapist that I still really, really, really recommend. And she had a shop here in the Keys, and I stumbled in there because I was looking for a tarot card reader. I had this like hair up my butt that I needed my cards read, and I was trying to find a tarot card reader in the Keys that wasn't a gypsy. So my friend Danielle had told me to go into this lady's shop, and I'd always wanted to go in, but I just never stopped because when you live in the Keys, it's just like one road. And if you're busy, you just often just don't stop. It sounds ridiculous, but it's just kind of how it works down here. So I finally went into her shop, and the first room of her shop, the front room, was full of crystals, all these different crystals. And we ended up having this very long conversation about hypnotherapy and the universe and spirit guides. It was an amazing conversation. I think I stood in her shop for like 2 hours. And then finally I had the courage to ask her, I said, you have all these crystals here, and I just don't feel interested in them. Does that make me a bad person in terms of spirituality? Does that mean I'm really not practicing as I should be? And because it had been bothering me, like I'd hear things about crystals or see crystals out and about, and I just never felt called to them. And she was amazing in regards to just telling me, if they're not calling to you, it's okay. This doesn't mean you're a bad person or you're not spiritual. It just means that, you're just not looking for them. It's just not calling to you. And don't worry about it. And they may never call to you, or someday they may. And that really put my mind at peace, because it had been something that I was kind of like itching and scratching about in the back of my head. And then last year, I was having dinner with her, and she ended up giving me a crystal for fear. Now, I don't feel in my soul that fear is something I have to really work on anymore. I really worked on fear a few years ago, and I really worked on pushing through fear with mantras and affirmations, which is something else I could probably talk about in another podcast. But it's not really something I feel is something I need to work on. So she gave me a fear crystal out of kindness, just was like, here, here's this crystal. And the crazy thing is, I lost it. Within 24 hours, it was gone. I have no idea where it went. It was just gone. It just disappeared. And it was funny when she gave it to me, because I took it out of appreciation, and you should always receive things. That's another thing with the universe, is always receive. If someone gives you a gift, whether it's a compliment or money, or they wish to treat you to lunch, or they wish to treat you to dinner, always receive it, because the universe is giving you gifts, and you always want to be in a receiving mode. So just take it and say thank you. So I did. I had taken it and I said thank you, and I put it in my purse, and I lost it. It was gone. So I always still took that as crystals weren't calling to me, and I didn't feel the need for crystals. And so I still kind of was like, that's very interesting. So tucked that in the back of my head, right? Some more just like, that's really interesting. So this past spring with COVID, I was out and about at some of my stores, and I was watching some different Instagram posts, and I started to feel like this little nudge towards crystals. A shop down here has some crystals, beautifully done, and I just kind of felt like this is kind of interesting. So when I was out and about in my journeys, I was in some different crystal shops, and I would look at the crystals, and I knew what some of them resonated or stood for. And I just was looking at them, and I still wasn't really being called. So it was still kind of weird. I was like, I don't really love this crystal. Like I just kind of would look at them and pass by. And in my head, I started designing what I wanted my crystals to look like in shape, and which ones, and how big. And it was just like this natural formation that I had while I was driving. And I still really didn't think much of it, to be really honest. And then literally within a day, I went into a store, and right away, when I walked in the store, on the left-hand side of the store was this beautiful display of crystals in these really cool crystal boxes. And sure as shit, the box that my eye went to immediately was exactly how I had designed these crystals in my head. It was amazing. The company that put these together is called Little Box of Rocks. And I'm not quite sure if they're still in business or not. Their website looks like it's up, but they're beautifully done. And there was a quartz, a citrine, a rose, and it was just beautiful. And what was so funny was the little card that came with the box had the name of the box, like they kind of named and themed all the different boxes, called Karma. And I just started laughing, because obviously that's the name of our brand, is Good Karma Sport Fishing, and Good Karma Success Coach came out of my husband's brand, Good Karma Sport Fishing. That's how this all came about. And if you listen to my husband's podcast or know how we named the boat, which is called Good Karma, it was me thinking about it when we were fishing. We hadn't been able to think of a name, and all of a sudden it came to me out of the blue, well, obviously from divine. And the second I said it out loud to my husband, a fish jumped on the line. So that is how the name of our business and the name of our boat and now the name of my podcast came about. It was divinely guided. So I really had to laugh when I found that box of crystals and that the little card for the name of the box was called Karma. So anyhow, so it just really came together. And then I felt called to the crystals. So since then, and that's been a couple months now, that was like in probably May and June, I ordered a book that I'll share with you. It's called Crystals for Beginners, and I got this book on Amazon. And the other book I also got on Amazon, of course, right? And this book is from Karen Frazier, and it's the guide to get started with the healing power of crystals. So just a great book to check out if you are learning. And then since then, I also bought some more crystals online because I wanted amethyst. And this is a really cool box as well. I want to say it was only like $40. I mean, it's ridiculously inexpensive. Something you could buy for yourself or give to a gift. And the company is Zatny, ZATNY.com. And this is also a gorgeous box. It's a little wood box. It comes with a beautiful fold out brochure that talks about the chakras. And there's also a pendulum for dowsing. There's lots of crystals. There's even some little rose quartz crystals that you can give away to a friend or family member. So that's a really cool thing too. So I'm not an affiliate for any of this stuff. I just think it's cool and beautiful, and I appreciated it. So I wanted to share with you as well in case that you're looking to try this or you're looking for a present for somebody. You never know. But these things were just beautiful tools that I picked up along the way. Oh, and the other thing I wanted to say too about not being called to the crystals is when we could have, gatherings before COVID, I was going to full moon celebrations at Carly Pinder's, which I've talked about before on several podcasts, and Carly's been on my podcast twice. And people would bring in their crystals to have them be charged in the moonlight, and I was still not called to them. I was like, okay, people are bringing in these, beautiful rocks and they're getting charged in the moon, and it didn't mean anything to me. So again, I just wasn't ready. I just wasn't ready for those tools yet. And now I've just really been finding more and more tools, finding and learning more and more about different tools. So, just know that you may have experiences like this as well, and don't disregard them. Like, don't put judgment on them. You're just not ready. You're just not ready. You might have listened to my podcast with Deborah Lupien about soul reading, and you might think that that was a bit out there, but it could mean that you're just not ready. You're just not ready for that yet. And you might be ready in a year. You might be ready in 2 years. You might be ready in 5 years. You might never be ready. Who knows, right? But don't place judgment on those things. Just tuck them away in the back of your head. And then someday you might be called and go, God, I really feel like getting a soul reading. And where did I hear about it? Oh, I heard about it on this girl's podcast. And then you go back and you find Deborah's information, and then you use the tool. So all of these things are tools. And I highly recommend you to scroll through my podcasts and look at all the different tools that I have talked about over the course of, over a year now. It's going to be a year and a half soon. I can't believe it. But over a year, I've talked about tarot cards, hypnotherapy, Reiki, soul readings, both from Deborah Lupien and Regina Rosa Celeste. I have talked about chakra readings. I have talked about lots of different books, meditation, one of my favorites, and of course, mantras and affirmations, lots of those. So I hope you find some of those tools and use them, or just tuck them away. Again, you can tuck them away in the back of your head that you've heard about that before, and maybe it's just not your timing to start to learn about them or practice them or study them or share them. The other thing I want to say too is in regards to old podcasts, because that is definitely a tool. And since you already listened to podcasts, take some time to go through old podcasts from not just me, obviously, but like I mentioned, but other people too. Dig through their old podcasts because that's where you're going to find some of the best nuggets. Because where they were in their journey 2 years ago, for example, might be where you are now. And they might not be talking about those things anymore because they've moved on, right? They've moved on. They already talked about it. They're past that. So they're just not talking about that anymore. But that might really serve you as to where you are in your journey, where they were 2 years ago. And I'm just using 2 years ago as an example. I hope you understand that. But some of those old podcasts are gold. And some of the things that it's helped me on in my past is just, getting over myself, getting over the fact that I am impatient. I'm extremely impatient. I'm going to bucket it and say being impatient is one of my gifts because that means I'm an action taker. I get things done because I want to see results. But sometimes, it can also be one of those things that drive you crazy, right? So when I first started in this space and I would get impatient about things, it would really help me to listen to old podcasts from coaches that have been in this space for, let's say, 10 years. And I would hear how they started and the struggles they went through and how long it took them to build an audience. And, no one's an overnight success, people. It all takes lots of hard work and time and patience and perseverance. And they would share those stories more in their earlier podcasts than their podcasts now, probably because they're not there anymore, number one. Number two, not many people share those journeys. It's just very interesting to me. They don't. And sometimes I think a lot of it is because they're trying to sell you a program that you get rich in 60 days, which just does not happen. Again, people, things take time. So they often don't share all the earlier stuff, right? So when you dig through their previous podcasts, you might find some really great nuggets that help you just gain clarity, that help your mind be more at ease, so you can just go with the flow and keep working towards your goals. Obviously don't give up, don't take the pedal off the metal, but just help you keep going. I'm not alone. Other people go through this too, and just keep going. And that's like super important. The other thing I would say is take some time in the search to search for podcasts that your favorite podcaster has been on before. So your favorite podcaster has more than likely been on someone else's podcast. And what I find amazing about listening to those podcasts is they are sharing things that they normally do not share on their own podcast, right? Because they're on the opposite side. They're getting asked questions. They have more of an opportunity to speak versus when you are the interviewer, you're listening more. And you might share a little bit here and there, but mostly it's about your guest. So when that podcaster, your favorite podcaster, is on someone else's podcast, you're going to get even more golden nuggets of wisdom from listening to that other person's podcast. And a lot of people don't do that. A lot of people don't not Google, but put in the search. Like I have Stitcher. That's my preferred platform to listen to. And I put in the search, let's say Gabby Bernstein, because Gabby Bernstein only has her podcast through her Miracle membership. But if you want to hear Gabby on some other people's podcasts, you can put Gabby Bernstein in your search, and then other people's podcasts will come up where she's a guest. So that's just a really great tool as well to use to get some nuggets, some really great golden nuggets. And when I think back about the podcasts that I've been on this year, such as Becoming Entrefied, Leanne's Voice, Why Not Me Academy, BYOB, those are 4 podcasts that I was on since COVID started and I had more time to be on other people's podcasts. I shared a lot of stuff in those podcasts, a lot of stuff about things that Ryan and I went through, different business building techniques, different mindsets and thought processes that I have or my husband and I both have. And those podcasts are gold. Those podcasts are gold if that's where you're at, if that's what you're looking for, if those are the tools that are calling to you, those podcasts are gold. So I highly recommend those tools as well, just so you can, you know what? Be the best that you can be. Why not? Why are you playing small? Don't play small anymore, people. Let's all play big. There's so much abundance in this world, and I know you all can do it. So I hope you love this podcast. I know I shared a lot. This might be a little bit longer than I normally do, but I just felt like all these great tools and things that I've been learning about are just really great things that I can share with you as well. And just revert back to the original quote, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. And when the student is really ready, the teacher will disappear. So just know that tools come and go, and you may need something now. And 6 months later, you might not need that person anymore. Just like me, I really don't follow Gabby Bernstein anymore. But 2 years ago, I followed her all the time. I was in her Miracle membership. I did her big course. And she's great. She's great. I think she's amazing. But I really don't follow her anymore because now I'm creating my own content. So I really don't follow that many people anymore. I'm really looking for books and tools for things I don't know anything about. So for me, in this example, is the crystals. I was wanting to learn more about the crystals, so I got a book on crystals. So I hope that makes sense, and hopefully it's relatable to you as well. So use your tools, be the best that you can be. I know you can do it, because if I can do it, you can do it too. So I am going to close with a mantra this time. I haven't done it in a while. I wanted to get back to some basics in regards to opening with a quote and closing with a mantra, because that's how I started this podcast. So take a deep breath. Close your eyes if you can. Obviously, if you're driving or running, please don't close your eyes. Every day, I learn more and get smarter and stronger. Every day, I learn more and get smarter and stronger. So I thank you so much for listening. I always appreciate it when I hear you share with a friend or family member, or reach out to me and let me know how this affected you. Maybe you have some tools that you'd like to share as well. I would love to hear from you. I always love to learn new things. And if you are ready to have a conversation about private coaching, I would love to speak with you. Last week, I shared my new healthy weight release program that I am on. And I have to say that yesterday I weighed myself. It hasn't been quite 3 weeks yet, but I have released 12 pounds and I'm super excited. My clothes are already feeling looser. I have some work to do, and it's mostly on my thighs and arms. I'll just call that out. On my thighs and arms are my trouble spots. So I will be very excited. I'm hoping that by September 1st, I look a little different, which would be really cool. And I will be more than happy to share some before and after pictures at that time. I just want them to be really compelling. But so far I have released 12 pounds. So whether it's weight release and you're ready to make that change in your lifestyle, I would love to chat with you, or just coaching in general about taking action and believing in yourself. I would love to help you. Please reach out to me. So till next time, be grateful, be curious, always be learning, and you know what? Have some fun too. Thanks for listening.